My life in the suburbs appeared picture-perfect to anyone on the outside looking in. A grand house with a sprawling backyard, a pristine pool that shimmered under the golden sun, a hard-working husband, and a son on the cusp of graduating from college. Everything painted the illusion of a dream. But behind closed doors, the reality was far from perfect. Mike, my husband, buried himself in work, and when he was home, he was more engaged with his phone or the television than with me. The warmth we once shared had faded into something distant, almost unrecognizable. Conversations became transactional. Touches became rare, and I found myself feeling invisible in my own marriage. It was a Saturday afternoon in early summer when I first truly noticed Marcus. He had been coming to our house for months, my son Eric's best friend, always polite, always confident. Until that day, he had been just another presence in the background. But something shifted. Eric had invited Marcus to swim in our backyard pool. From the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of them through the sliding glass doors. Marcus stood at the pool's edge, water glistening on his dark, flawless skin, his lean, muscular frame outlined against the midday sun. He dove effortlessly into the pool, cutting through the water with ease, and when he resurfaced, he grinned, flashing perfect white teeth. For a moment, I couldn't look away. It wasn't just his appearance that held me captive. It was the way he carried himself. There was a quiet confidence in his posture, a vibrancy in his movements, so different from Mike's weary, indifferent demeanor. A strange stirring bloomed within me, an unfamiliar flutter in the depths of my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. I swallowed hard, brushing the sensation aside, and turned back to the dishes, yet my mind kept wandering back to him. In the weeks that followed, Marcus became a more frequent presence in our home. He and Eric worked out together in the garage, played video games late into the night, lounged by the pool for hours. And every time he was near, I became hyper-aware of him. The sound of his voice, the way he moved, the easy confidence in his laughter. One afternoon, while Eric ran to the store, Marcus stepped inside for a drink. I was at the counter, chopping vegetables, when his deep voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Blake, do you mind if I grab some water?" I hadn't heard him approach, and his presence startled me. I turned, meeting his gaze. "Of course, Marcus," I said, keeping my tone even measured. "And please call me Amanda." He smiled, that same effortless, charming grin that always seemed to catch me off guard. "Thanks, Amanda." He reached for a glass, and in that small motion, our hands brushed, an innocent, fleeting touch. But it sent a jolt through me, an unexpected shiver that raced up my spine. I pulled back quickly, my breath catching for just a second too long. "Sorry about that," he said with a low chuckle. "It's fine," I murmured, though my pulse betrayed me. I turned back to the counter, gripping the knife a little tighter, willing myself to focus on anything but the way my skin still tingled where it had touched it. To anyone looking in from the outside, my life was the embodiment of suburban perfection. A grand house with a sprawling backyard, a pristine pool shimmering beneath the golden sun, a devoted husband who worked tirelessly, and a son on the brink of his college graduation. A picture painted in flawless strokes, yet beneath its surface, the colors had begun to bleed. Mike, my husband, had long since disappeared into the demands of his job, and when he was home, he was more present in front of a screen than with me. Conversations had grown cold, touches had turned absent, and I found myself moving through my own home like a ghost. I had spent years convincing myself this was normal, that marriages evolved into quiet companionship. But deep inside, a part of me mourned the woman I used to be, the one who once felt seen, desired, alive. It was a Saturday afternoon in early summer when Marcus first caught my eye, though he had been in my home for months. He was my son Eric's best friend, polite, confident, always smiling. Until that day, he had been nothing more than another presence in the background. But something shifted. Eric had invited Marcus to swim, and as I stood in the kitchen, my gaze drifted through the sliding glass doors. Marcus stood at the pool's edge, his skin glistening with water under the relentless heat of the midday sun. His athletic frame was lean and sculpted, his muscles taut with youth. With effortless grace, he dove into the water, slicing through its surface before resurfacing with a grin, flashing perfect, white teeth. I should have looked away, but I didn't. It wasn't just his body that held my gaze. It was his presence. He carried himself with an easy confidence, a quiet strength so different from the exhaustion and indifference I had come to associate with Mike. A heat stirred deep inside me, unfamiliar yet intoxicating, something I hadn't felt in years. I swallowed hard, turning away from the window, telling myself it was nothing, a fleeting moment, a ridiculous thought. But the thought lingered. Over the weeks that followed, Marcus became a constant presence in our home. He and Eric worked out in the garage, played video games late into the night, lounged by the pool for hours. And every time he was near, I found myself attuned to him in ways I shouldn't have been. The deep timbre of his voice, the way his laughter filled the house, the scent he left behind in the air long after he was gone. One afternoon, while Eric had stepped out to run errands, Marcus wandered into the kitchen for a drink. "Mrs. Blake, do you mind if I grab some water?" His voice startled me, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned to face him, forcing an easy smile. "Of course, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "And please call me Amanda." His lips curled into that effortless smile, one I was beginning to recognize far too well. "Thanks, Amanda." He reached for a glass, and as he did, our hands brushed just barely, just for a second. A simple, fleeting touch. And yet, a jolt shot through me, a sharp inhale betraying my composure. I pulled away quickly, praying he hadn't noticed. "Sorry about that," he chuckled, eyes lingering on mine for just a moment too long. "It's fine," I murmured, though my pulse thundered in my ears. After he left the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, pressing my palms against the cool surface, willing myself to calm the racing thoughts in my head. What was happening to me? I was a woman in my 40s, married, a mother. Yet here I was, blushing like a schoolgirl over a boy half my age. That evening, long after everyone had gone to bed, I sat by the pool, staring into the water as it shimmered beneath the moonlight, its gentle ripples mirroring the unrest in my chest. I told myself it was nothing more than a harmless crush, something fleeting, something that would pass. But deep down I knew better. The way Marcus had looked at me earlier, that wasn't in my imagination. There was something there, unspoken yet undeniable, a dangerous spark waiting to catch fire. I made a silent promise to myself that night, to push these feelings away, to bury them beneath the weight of duty and responsibility. But even as I made that promise, a single, treacherous thought whispered through my mind. What if, for days, I tried to ignore it, to smother it beneath the routine of daily life? But Marcus made it impossible. His presence filled every corner of my home, his laughter, his scent, the knowing glances he sent my way when he thought no one was looking. Then one humid afternoon, everything changed. Eric and Marcus were outside, playing basketball in the driveway, their shirts discarded under the sweltering heat. I had opened the living room window, letting in the warm summer air, their playful banter drifting inside. I tried to focus on folding laundry, but my eyes kept straying, to the way Marcus moved, to the sheen of sweat on his skin, to the effortless way he carried himself. When the game ended, Eric ran inside to grab something from his room, leaving Marcus alone on the porch, a bottle of water in his hand. I was still standing at the window when he turned, catching me watching, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, a knowing smile. My heart pounded as I looked away, pretending to busy myself with the laundry. "Nice day, isn't it?" His voice startled me, deep and smooth. He was standing just outside the window now, leaning against the frame. "Yes," I managed, forcing a casual tone. "You should come outside more, Mrs. Blake. Get some sun." His words were light, but there was something beneath them, something dangerous. "I'm fine right here," I replied, feigning a smile, then turned away before he could see the way my hands trembled. But his words lingered. That evening, as I stood alone in the kitchen, washing dishes beneath the dim glow of the overhead light, I heard the soft pad of footsteps behind me. Need any help? I didn't have to turn to know who it was. "No," I said, my voice steady, though my pulse was anything but. "I've got it." He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the counter, watching me. "You work too hard," he murmured. I paused, my fingers tightening around the dish in my hand. No one had said anything like that to me in years. "It's just what I do," I said with a small shrug. "Well," he said, his voice impossibly soft, "maybe someone should take care of you for a change." I turned to him then, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide the way I looked at him. The air between us crackled with something unspoken, something inevitable. I should have walked away. I should have ended it before it began. But I didn't, because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about right or wrong. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was only thinking about how, for the first time in years, I finally felt alive.